Good afternoon. Welcome to the Midday Mull for Tuesday, the 3rd of September. Working through the Psalms with the chain, we read Psalm 44, one of the Psalms of the sons of Korah, and it looks at why things are going wrong. It begins by looking at how God has worked with Israel and met his promises and done good things to them, but then it changes. Reading from verse 8, in God we make our boast all day long, and we will praise your name forever. But now you have rejected and humbled us. You no longer go out with our armies. You made us retreat before the enemy, and our adversaries have plundered us. And the psalmist goes on to say, if we'd done wrong, this would be God's judgment, and that would be understandable. But that's not the case. Down at verse 17, he says, all this came upon us, though we had not forgotten you. We had not been false to your covenant. Our hearts had not turned back. Our feet had not strayed from your path. And he wrestles trying to make sense of it. And it's an issue that I think people still wrestle with today. Why do bad things happen to good people? And conversely, we need to question, why do good things happen to bad people? And it would be very easy if there was a sort of immediate one-to-one relationship between God's promise and our behavior. So I say my prayers this morning, and that explains why I found the parking space. And I forgot to have my quiet time this morning, which explains why I dropped the coffee cup and it broke. That was God's judgment. And I look at that and I think, no, that's not how it works. God's judgment and God's blessing are principles for eternity and for the long term. They're not immediate. Sometimes it does happen, and we recognize that. Sometimes there are immediate blessings that God gives, and sometimes we'll do something and God's judgment may be far more imminent and immediate. But that's not always the rule. And so therefore we've got to hold back, and we can't assume that when people are suffering, they've brought it on themselves. Neither when they're blessed that this is or that they're doing well, that this is a sign of God's blessing on them. It may not be. And we also can't need to measure ourselves in the same light. And sometimes when people find that things are going wrong and life's not working out and they've got sick and there's all these things happening, they stop and say, oh, maybe this is God's judgment on me. It's unlikely. That's not what we read in Scripture. Instead, we see God being gracious. And we're living in a fallen world, and we're surrounded by sinful people, and therefore we experience bad things so often. Look through the New Testament, read through Acts, and see what happened to the apostles, those good and godly people who are walking with God, meeting with Jesus, taking the good news out. They suffered, not because of anything that they did, but because of the sinful people that surrounded them. So we must never assume that when bad things happen to us or to others, it's God's judgment. And we also mustn't assume that because I'm doing the right thing, there will automatically be blessings. And why isn't it happening? Because God's looking for our eternity. God's judgment and God's promises work not on a minute-by-minute scale, but on the scales of eternity. And we know, and that's what we hang on to and we trust, that there will be judgment and people will be held accountable. They will have to answer. And likewise, when you have walked with God and trusted in God and served God and his promised blessings, it will come. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not even in the next decade, maybe not even in my lifetime, but I know that God is true to his word and that blessing will come in eternity. So be encouraged to love people, to encourage people, and be encouraged yourself. Be blessed.